Welcome to the M1 Concourse Raceway, a place we've been to many a times for cars and coffee, and we have another car show. But not a normal cars and coffee, no. We still have the wide range of vehicles, from classics to modern to all sorts of things, but unlike cars and coffee, which is static, this show is a little more active. Think of this as America's Goodwood, the American Speed Festival, quite possibly the most expensive parking lot anywhere in America. These are icons of the motorsport world. I mean, we had an entire Indy car corral, that was one of the main features today, and you could actually see the progression of technology, starting out with the Watson Special Roadsters, the front-engine Offenheiser Indy engines, going all the way to the mid-engined late 80s Offenheiser engines. You actually see the progression of that through the years. It's an incredible thing just to look at how much things have changed. These are very valuable IndyCar competitors. I mean, this car right here is Dan Gurney's All-American Racing Shark-Nosed Eagle from 1966. These are some of the most expensive cars you can possibly think of, certainly in America right now. And they all look fantastic. I love the liveries on these cars. The Domino's livery on the Lola 8200 is iconic. More for my taste, though, the Sunoco Mclaren M16B Indy car with the incredible gold and blue paint, the iconic Sunoco livery. These are timeless machines, and we had a few Parnelli Jones vehicles as well with their VPJ, I think this is the VPJ-1, but I'm going to call it the Dihedral for obvious reasons. They were trying to get more air across the wings, and I'm not really sure that it worked. More square footage by using the hypotenuse instead of the standard tabletop. It's an interesting looking car. Again, I'm not sure how useful that it was, but I always appreciate outside of the box thinking, and well, that is very outside of the box. The dihedral wing system is bizarrely beautiful, but if you want to talk about outside the box thinking, we have to go to Lotus at Colin Chapman and the Type 56. Yes, we had not one but two turbine-powered, all-wheel drive Lotus Indy cars. I don't know why I'm seeing so many turbine cars. I saw a Chrysler turbine car at Concourse, and now we have the Lotus 56, two Lotus 56s, cars that were leading the Indy 500 until they broke down with 8 laps to go. That's an incredible story that nearly worked, but then the technology got banned because it was so fast before it broke down. They're incredible machines, and that pretty much sets the tone for this entire thing. Now, it was not just Indy cars in attendance. There were a wide variety of cars, ranging from Formula 2 cars to Formula 5000 cars. And yes, if there's Formula 2, Indy car, and Formula 5000, naturally there is going to be at least some form of a Formula 1 car, and I believe this is that form. I think it's Jordan 194, I think. But it's got a V8, not the V10, so I'm not 100% sure. The buy-sell looks right, so it might be a Jordan from a different era. Either way, it's incredibly fast, and it makes one hell of a noise. As we will find out pretty soon, because yes, these cars went on the track. now this is still a car show with road cars. There are innumerable race cars in attendance, but these are road cars as well, if you can count the Radicals as road-ish cars. I think they're road legal in Britain, so we'll give them that. That's the brand spanking new Radical SR10. Came out, I think, August, maybe April of this year. Same thing with this thing, the Radical SR3XX, basically the track version of the the SR3. I mean, it's a cornucopia of very valuable race cars and road cars. A lot of them did not get run, because how do you explain to someone that you crashed one of 2 GT350s with a factory-included supercharger, or one of 20 or so Shelby 427 Cobras? That's my Zenith realistic dream car, 427 Cobra. I thought this was a replica. It's not. It's the actual 427 Cobra. Granted, they just drove it around a little bit, but they did race other cars. But why simply have stock cars and you can have stock cars, like NASCAR style? There were 4 of them in attendance. The truck broke down on the second day, and the Pontiac broke down at the end of the first day, so not great track record, but, whatever. That's not the point. The point is we had the only surviving Hudson Hornet. It wasn't very quick, but the guy was actually giving it a lot of beans for what it was. I'm amazed that they actually drove this thing. Again, it's not very quick, but you can see the leaning. I took a look at it. It still has a normal interior. It's very heavy. It's a road car back when NASCARs were actually stock cars, and that meant that, well, when it was on track with the rest of the teams that were actually doing testing with their cars instead of just doing demonstration laps, it really did slow them down a bit. The other NASCARs, the green truck and the blue Charger, were actually trying to go for hot laps, and when they were finally freed from the Hudson, they were quite quick. We move from stock car endurance racing, which clearly would not go very well because of their 50% mortality rate this event, to actual endurance racing. Again, a lot of these cars sadly did not run, like this Praga R1, or the fantastic 1966 Porsche 906 that competed at Le Mans against Ford and Ferrari during their big duel in the background. Which, it's a lot smaller when you stand next to it. That's a golf cart next to it. So, yeah. But, again, for every car that didn't run, there was another car that did run. And most of what you're going to see after this did actually run on the event. So we have the IMSA Ford Mustang that we saw at Woodward a few years ago. This is one of the surviving Greenwood Corvettes that competed at Le Mans and the 24 Hours of Daytona. This, too, is a GTU Corvette. That was a GTO Corvette. This is a GTU. It's confusing, I know, but this is a C4, not a C3. That probably doesn't help normal people, but whatever. If you want proper GTPs instead of GTUs and GTOs, so you got prototype racers, in the form of the Nissan and the Porsche 911. This is not a 911 GT1, it's a 911 993 styled aerodynamically like a GT1. It even says GT1 should be on the back. It competes in the IMSA GTU class, which is pretty cool. I didn't even know this car existed, and it makes sense to style a prototype racer after, well, one of the most successful GT1 cars of all time. Lola showed up with their endurance cars in full force, both old with the T70 Mark III at Le Mans car, and their newer-ish Le Mans car, a 2014 LMP1 car they built, which competed at Le Mans, which is probably the most modern LMP car I've ever seen. Also one of the only ones, but that's not the point. Then we had the specials, if you will. We had the Arnold special here, imported from Britain, and then we had the good old American Devon special. These are sort of hand-built race cars that competed in endurance races in the 60s. But if you want to talk about hand-built endurance racers that are sports cars, you gotta talk about the Maserati Birdcage. It's probably the best-looking car in show, which is pretty big competition, FYI. And having seen this more than just in video games now, I can attest it is really small, it is really flimsy, it really looks like they just got a aluminum space frame and feed a bunch of aluminum panels onto it. And it sounds pretty amazing.
This car won. It was actually a race that this car lost in 1959 at Lime Rock Park. That was one of the most famous road races ever held in America. It was a Formula Libre style event. Some of these endurance cars making their way around. Obviously, you're defined by success at all different levels, but endurance racing is a big part of it. We're talking this weekend, but this Lola chassis, the
modern LMP2 design so interesting because
technically, there is one more endurance racer I forgot about. A little devil monster thing. Called the Sunoco S12. Sure, it has no horsepower, but it weighs less than 800 pounds. And look how low it is, with how much grip it has. It is insanely fast. It broke the track record 3 times and became the first car to lap this track, M1 Concourse, under 1 minute. To show you how fast this car is, I have a little comparison on the screen here. Right now, you will see it catching up to a Radical SR3 XX, the brand new one that debuted this year. It caught up to that and then overtook it with ease. Then, if that doesn't prove it to you, in the span of less than 5 laps, it reeled in, caught up, and then overtook a LMP1 car. It reeled in an LMP1 car. It seemed to be unstoppable. So the LMP car stopped it by missing his braking zone slightly on the grass or some mechanical issue, and binned it in the wall. He was fine, the car was pretty much fine, it was just a little bit of bodywork damage, very minor because the tires and it's a braking zone already. But it did put an end to the Sunoco dominance by ending the session prematurely before he could get the lap record broken for a 4th time. Now, the main show will come in just a second, but this is the show before the show. This is Can-Am, Canadian American Racing, and they had a whole host of the fastest, truly unlimited class cars. Lola was in prime attendance with the TRC Mark II here, and I don't think I ever actually saw it in the pits with all of its body panels on. It either had its doors off, or the runk off, or everything off. They also showed up with the older Can-Am cars from the early 60s, not the late 60s and 70s. So this is probably one of the most beautiful cars in the show. Close contention with that Maserati. This is the T70 Spider. If you want to go to the crazy end of the spectrum, like that late 70s I told you about, the Porsche 917-30. The 1,600 horsepower monster that is the fastest, most powerful circuit racer humanity's ever built. And you know what? Unlike all the other cars, which were sort of nanny-ish around the track, barring that crazy S12, the drivers of the Can-Am cars are as crazy as their cars and actually race them. Now, I'm not saying that the Indy cars and the Can-Am cars and the endurance cars aren't fantastic vehicles. They are. But the real reason I'm here are the 4 cars brought from a small, innovative Texan by the name of Jim Hall and his team, Chaparral. They had 4 out of the 5 Chaparrals from their museum in Texas. The 2 that started all, the most successful one. Then they had the 2K, the car that brought ground effect to Indy and won the Indy 500 outright. And then there were the winged beasts. The Chaparral 2E that competed at Can-Am, and the Chaparral 2F that competed in the World Sports Car Championship. These are the cars with the crazy active rear wings, controlled by a pedal where the clutch pedal would be. Since these had revolutionary 3-speed automatic gearboxes for motorsport anyway, you could hit the clutch pedal, or the pedal where the clutch would be, and it would remove the wing either for DRS, basically, or as an air dam to stop you better. This is normal stuff on Formula 1 and even most supercars these days. But back in 1966, this was witchcraft. It changed aerodynamics as we know of it. These were more advanced than Formula 1. It would take decades for F1 to catch up to what these cars could do. I mean, road cars didn't have this stuff until the 1980s. That is how forward-thinking the Chaparrals were. They're phenomenal machines, and seeing them not just in person but on the track was something truly once in a lifetime.
Because it was half sharp, and that's where the 2
to be taken, I think you can get part of that too through being here and watching.
Snowmobile engine down the front of that, right? When we talked about Jim Hall,
career between 1963 and 1965.
Obviously, I'm going to be a little bit biased towards Chaparral. I love an underdog, outside-the-box thinker who truly pioneered things in terms of aerodynamics and their relationship to the car. And for that, these are some of the greatest cars I have ever seen, not just at the show, but in my entire life. But saying that, this show highlighted brilliant machines from all classes of motorsport. It didn't matter if they were Can-Am or IndyCar. They got their moment to shine. It didn't matter. We had cars from Can-Am, the Lola T70s, the Mark IIs. We had Time Attack Evos and Imprezas. We had Cole Trickle's NASCAR from Days of Thunder. And even though some of them were static, and if you're going to have a Goodwood-style event, maybe you should have all the cars run, and otherwise sort of defeats the point of having a motorsport event. But anyway, even just sitting next to these cars, looking at them, you can just feel the historic significance wafting off of them. It's a true gift to be next to these vehicles. It was an absolute blast and a pleasure. Now, next year, if I'm hearing things right, they're supposed to be honoring Carroll Shelby, and while there's certainly things that can be improved upon, I think they've got a winning formula. They just refine it, they just make it a little bit more perfect, but we'll have to wait to see what happens next year.